This week, I spent more time than I had planned watching the live stream of the United Methodist Church's special session of their General Conference. Now, the church polity nerd part of me was fascinated by getting a glimpse into how another tradition makes decisions. But the real reason I was watching was that the topic of those decisions was close to my heart, and I would guess many of your hearts as well. They were debating the inclusion of LGBTQ folks in the United Methodist Church. At the end of the day, delegates voted by a very narrow margin to strengthen the language banning LGBTQ ministers and marriage. It was a result that was devastating to so many, both within and outside the denomination. I can't even imagine what it must have been like for the LGBTQ Methodists to be in that room or listening online as their siblings in faith essentially voted them out. There have been many times when I have been disappointed with decisions that we Unitarian Universalists have made, but I have never had to sit and wonder whether the result of a vote would mean that I was no longer welcome in our faith. Now, it's not yet clear what will happen next for our Methodist siblings, but it is clear that they're embarking on something new and unknown. I've been really heartened to see churches and even whole conferences declaring that they won't submit to these strengthened rules. But who knows what this will mean for their future. The decision may send some individuals and whole congregations seeking a new home. It's not a journey that they sought. In fact, it's a journey that they actively fought against, that they have been thrust into against their will. There are all kinds of journeys that one can take. Some are physical journeys, others are spiritual or emotional. Some journeys have a really clear destination, and others begin without a set goal. And still others have no end in sight. Some journeys will take you somewhere and then take you back home. On others, there is no going back. Often the most difficult journeys we take are the ones that we don't choose, the ones that life or circumstance thrusts upon us. These journeys change us when we weren't looking to be changed. They take us away from home, physical or spiritual, that we always knew, and force us to find or create a new home. They can be painful, identity shifting, life altering. There is no going back to the way it was before. These kind of unasked for journeys can happen for all kinds of reasons. In the case of the LGBTQ United Methodists and their allies, it is a decision beyond their control that sends them on this journey. In the case of the main character in our Wonderbox story, it was the complicated nature of our immigration system that set her on her journey to find a new home here in the United States. Dreamers is based on Yuyi Morales' personal story. Yuyi crossed a bridge from Juarez, Mexico to El Paso, Texas with her 2-month-old son, Kelly, for 2 reasons. So that Kelly could meet his great-grandfather who was near death, and so that Yuyi could marry Kelly's father, who was a U.S. citizen. Yuyi expected to go back to Mexico soon after, but once she became a permanent resident, she could not keep her status and go back. Yuyi did not immediately find home in this country. She writes, "Like most immigrants, I missed the things that felt familiar. my family, the food, my friends, my job as a swimming coach, and my ability to communicate, to understand and be understood. In this new place where I did not speak the language, it was as if no one seemed to notice I existed, as if my words and actions didn't count. In those first days, I constantly wondered if I would ever find a place where I was valued. As we hear in the story, Yuyi and Kelly do eventually find their way in this new land with the help of picture books in their public library. They couldn't go back to their old home, but they were able to find their way and create a new home. And Yuyi eventually found a new calling as a picture book writer and illustrator. Not all journeys that we are thrust into have a happy ending, however. That Woody Guthrie song we just heard was so cheerful, but it tells the story of Dust Bowl migrants coming to California from the Midwest, where they have been pushed out by drought. The journey of these migrants was not an easy one, and in the end, they find that too many people have already come to California. There's not enough jobs and pay to go around. So that song warns them, go back where you came, stay back east. The bleakness of the story in this song is a bleakness that many migrants feel. They're pushed from their homes because their homes have become dangerous, because there's no way to sustain their families there anymore. As poet Warsan Shire writes, you only leave home when home won't let you stay. And there is no guarantee that your journey will take you anywhere better, or even that anywhere will let you in. The only guarantee is that you will be changed along the way, that home will mean something different than it did before. While the story of migrants and refugees is an extreme example of a journey that one did not choose, all of us have smaller examples of such journeys in our lives. They are moments that something happens that forces us out of our comfort zone. The times when you get unexpected news, good or bad, that changes the course of your life. These moments that send us on unexpected journeys are part of each of our lives. As Pema Chodron wrote in our Words for Reflection, we can never know what will happen to us next. We can try to control the uncontrollable by looking for security and predictability, always hoping to be comfortable and safe. But the truth is, we can never avoid uncertainty, she writes. This not knowing is part of the adventure. It's also what makes us afraid. There is fear and uncertainty in any kind of journey that we embark on, but in the journeys that are forced on us, it is magnified. We are reminded at every twist and turn of our utter lack of control, of the way in which our lives are not fully in our hands, no matter how hard we try. So how do you deal with this kind of journey? The journey that you don't choose, the journey that you are thrust into. How do you make it out the other side? And how do you meet people where they are when they are on these journeys? Spiritual writer Christine Valtner's Paintner says that exile calls us to soften our hard defenses, to acknowledge that we don't have all the answers, to seek the resources available in our new communities and reach out to strangers for support. Perhaps this is the recipe for how we get through these journeys that we don't seek. These journeys are difficult because they call us into a deeper vulnerability than most of us are comfortable with. They call us to reach out, to admit that we don't know everything, to let down our defenses. And they call those who receive us in the midst of our journeys to meet us with the same openness and vulnerability. Recently, I've been reading and listening to Kate Bowler, a Duke Divinity School professor who was diagnosed with incurable stage 4 cancer when she was 35. Since then, she's been on a journey of treatment and regular testing that she will be on for the rest of her life, no matter how long that may be. She speaks and writes thoughtfully and authentically about what it is like to be on that journey, one that she certainly did not choose for herself. In a New York Times op-ed written just a couple months after her diagnosis, Kate writes, "Cancer has kicked down the walls of my life. I cannot be certain that I will walk my son to his elementary school someday or subject his love interest to cheerful scrutiny. I struggle to buy books for the academic projects I fear I can't finish, for a perfect job I may be unable to keep. Cancer requires that I stumble around in the debris of dreams I thought I was entitled to and plans I didn't realize I had made." She goes on. "But cancer has also ushered in new ways of being alive. Everything feels as if it is painted in bright colors. In my vulnerability, I am seeing the world without the Instagrammed filter of breezy certainties and perfectible moments. I can't help noticing the brittleness of the walls that keep most people fed, sheltered, and whole. I find myself returning to the same thoughts again and again. Life is so beautiful. Life is so hard." Kate is not on the other side of her journey and likely will never be. But even in the midst of it, she is able to find beauty and joy in a way that I find remarkable. She doesn't do it by denying her pain or her anger or the reality that she is every day living on borrowed time. Instead, she leans into the vulnerability of this journey she was thrust into and invites others into that vulnerability as well. Kate writes all about the things not to say and do when you encounter someone who is on one of these unasked for journeys. She lists the many platitudes she heard and continues to hear on a daily basis, and she invites us to go deeper. She says that very few people want to scoot up to the edge with you while the cliff erodes under your feet. But I would say that is what love demands of us when we encounter someone who has been thrust into a terrible situation. Love calls us to simply be there, to name the reality of that situation and accompany them through it. The journeys we don't choose are rarely the easy ones. They push us out of our comfort zone and often leave us wondering if we have any control over our lives at all. They remove that Instagrammed filter of breezy certainties and perfectible moments. And they happen to every single one of us. Big or small, each of us will go on journeys that we did not choose. How do we make it to the other side? I don't know for sure, but I think it has something to do with being present, bearing witness, loving ourselves and each other through it all. Kate Bowler writes, "I'm not great on trust because I'm not sure what the terms are, but I'm big on love because I felt it. Love from the church, love from the people visiting me, just a really intense experience of divine love that made me feel no longer disposable." When the rest of the world is beyond our control, and we know it is, may we know that divine love, and may we be that love for one another. May it be so.